Let's talk about the situation with the NSA. We know the two series of exposed leaks came out, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday. We found out about it all on Friday. One was the NSA program of looking at phone records. The other was an expanded version called PRISM, where they look at all social media, examining all 9 servers worldwide. The biggest servers in the world are located in the U.S., so using that capability in order to screen through Facebook, Yahoo, and all major social networking sites in order to stop the next terror attacks using complex algorithms and programs. A lot of people say, hey, wait a second, they're in my Facebook, they're looking at my bills, looking at my phone numbers, way over the top. And others say, wait, I remember when people were falling out of buildings because we didn't pick up signals and we ended up having 3,000 Americans die. Right. This is what we need to do.
Well, 29-year-old Edward Snowden, who had worked for the CIA and most recently for Booz Allen Hamilton, outed himself yesterday. There he is in a hotel room in Hong Kong. He said he is outing what the United States is doing because the United States is destroying privacy around the world. Here's Mr. Snowden.
Even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded, and the storage capability of these systems increases every year consistently by orders of magnitude, to where it's getting to the point you don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call, and then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made, every friend you've ever discussed something with, and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context of a wrongdoer.
So he gave up his life 3 weeks ago. He moved from Hawaii to Hong Kong. He knew that this information would come out. He allowed The Guardian, which was the establishment that he gave his story to say who he was over the weekend. So what do you think? Is he a hero or is he a traitor? Let's ask Donald Trump, who joins us every Monday morning, to get his thoughts. Good morning to you, Donald.
Good morning.
So is the whistleblower a threat to national security, or is he an American hero in your mind?
Well, to begin with, I find it very interesting that he goes to Hong Kong to get a little security. It's a pretty strange thing going on with Hong Kong. And frankly, I don't think you have any winners here. I didn't like him. To me, he looks like a grandstander. I'm watching him. He's been there for 3 months. And I didn't like him. At the same time, I mean, that's a lot of information that people are getting and, you know, that our government is getting. And you say, really, where does it stop? So it's a mess. There's no question about it. I don't like him. I don't like what they're doing.
Yeah, and you know, my concern this morning, Donald, is that I don't want our country to have infighting as a result of it. And I fear that now the country's going to be separated on what they think about him, what they think about the NSA, what they think about how we treat terrorism. And I mean, do you have that feeling at all?
Well, I don't know that there's any answer. I mean, you know, I feel I'm as strong as it gets on terrorism, and yet, you know, when you're just going into everybody's records and you can go into an enemy's records that has nothing to do about terrorism if you happen to be in government, you know, you really say, where does it stop?
Right.
So they're going far, far too, it's too evasive, what they're doing is actually incredible. And you're talking about hundreds of millions of emails and everything. So they're going way too far. At the same time, you never like a guy like this because, you know, you can claim national security.
Yep.
And I guess he can claim it, but we can definitely claim it. So, what happens with him?
The way Michael Hayden explained it is that, you know, for example, you get someone on a Xeristan and you go through his pockets and you find a bunch of phone numbers there, you plug them in, and a bunch of things light up because you're able to store this stuff and you're able to get direct lines of passage because we have the unique ability, since we created the Internet, thanks to Al Gore, to keep all the major servers in this country. So we're using that asset to our advantage.
Well, you know, I see it, and I see it in trials. Every time you have a trial, they used to ask for, like, a witness. Now all they ask for is emails. Everything's about emails. And, you know, it's getting to a point where our lives are very different than they used to be. And I don't like people like this because there could be a national security concern, and it probably is. At the same time, what he's doing is really wrong. And I think also what the government is doing is wrong.
Sure. We understand there's a report out this morning that apparently this guy is looking for asylum. It sounds like he's got a couple of allies in the country of Iceland. Apparently Iceland is his best option. His likeliest is prison. But, Donald, you know what it seems to come down to for a lot of people is when George Bush started this program and, you know, the administration back then, it was just looking in at phone calls between the United States and internationally. Right. Now it's all of our calls. Right. It's all of our email. And it comes down to this. Do you trust the government? Because there are so many people out there, given what happened with the IRS thing, they don't trust the government.
Well, it's very hard to trust them right now, and you just said it. I mean, if you really look at it, what's going on with other nations, I mean, how are they going to trust us anymore? Because, you know, this is affecting other nations. It's affecting their security, and we're supposed to have relationships with other people and other countries. And, I mean, this is having a huge impact on them. I've heard where they're extremely upset about it. They don't know what's going on. So this is a real mess. It's got to be solved, but I'm not sure there's any very good answer. He's a bad guy, however.
I wish that less people had access to it. According to his claims, he could have sold the intel for you or I or anybody else. I think yours would be more valuable. That's just me personally. To anybody. And he had that access. And a third of the people, of the 1.4 million that have this access, are private contractors. Then we have no control with these private contractors who they are hiring.
Well, you know, the big problem with the Internet age, and I've always watched and I've seen, you know, in the old days you'd have privacy. You'd have real privacy. Today with the computers, you press a button, you get some brilliant computer geek to, you know, knows what they're doing, and all of a sudden everything's exposed. And I mean, this wouldn't happen 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, it's really, we are on a very, you talk about the cyber wars and everything else, we are on a very weak platform, and it's very, very disconcerting. You know, I sort of like to go back to the old days where you'd write numbers down on the back of an envelope.
Or you put a cup next to a wall and see if you can hear the other room. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? And apparently that's how he rose through the ranks of the CIA and also to this latest job, because he didn't even graduate from high school, but he was so good in computers. I do want to mention that there are politicians who are saying that 2 major terrorist threats were thwarted as a result of these efforts, but you have to put that in perspective that the Boston bombing was not